Welcome back to the JLL coaching pod. I hope you're having a good day. How to build confidence as a trainer. I remember when I first started out at Nuffield Gym in Paddington, London. Shout out. And I remember being there, and I've always trained. I'd already trained for like 10 years at this point in the gym. So I was like, yeah, I know how to train. And then I remember I was like speaking to members, trying to figure out what a session would look like. And I was like, you're obviously trying to solve their problems. You got no real idea what you're doing with coaching. You're like, hey, how can I help you? How you doing? How's your day going? Okay, cool. You want to book in a free session? Can I get to know you? What's going on? And then they're like, yeah. And you're like, oh shit, they've said yes. What do I do now? I remember there was this one guy, Alex. He was an eye doctor. And, you know, when you see these people in the gym and they're just like, their form is shocking and they're doing all this questionable shit, like, I don't know, swinging the dumbbells on their curls, or their squats are just like 1/8 of a squat, that kind of vibe. He was this kind of guy. And I've still got the Word document. I remember I spent like hours figuring out a game plan for him for our first session. And it was just like warm up. Because before, when I was training, I would just go straight into it. Straight in the mixer. Like, what the hell am I doing? Straight into like, all right, if I'm doing back day, I'm going to do some directly into pull-ups, whatever. But obviously you can't do that with everyone. People aren't able to do pull-ups. They don't have the prerequisite strength. You're like, where do I go? What do I do? And I just remember this feeling. I think it was like the first few months of chaos, of not knowing what to do. I'd never followed a program. I never bought a program. So I'd never had that experience of running through like, all right, this is how a program looks. What am I actually doing here? And then I remember I bought Marcus Philly's program and followed it, and that just changed everything. Like with how to organize a session. Do you run supersets? Do you do upper lower? Do you do full body? Whatever. These kinds of questions. How to be efficient with your time in the gym. Because most personal trainers, they'll generally train a lot. You're not going to become a personal trainer unless you have trained a lot, at least at some period in your life. Well, I hope so anyway. And when you train a lot, well, back then at least, I did 6 days a week. So it's like you can get every body part in a couple times. It's just strength training. Didn't really have a good grasp of what I was doing, to be honest, looking back. And in the moment, I was like, what the hell am I doing here? But then you get a good program that's well thought through, that's nice and organized. You follow it, and the progression is just phenomenal for you physically. And you learn masses. Like, the learning process at the start is just you don't even know what you don't know. You think, because I've got progress, I've got gains doing this, I can go in and help others. And then I think after about 6 months, I'd pretty comfortably figured out a reasonable way to get people reasonable results, to get reasonable outcomes. I'm thinking back compared to my knowledge now, and I'm just like, that was pathetic. There was less information out there. There was less info on Instagram and TikTok or whatever. There was still stuff on YouTube, but it was more aimed at bros and broettes rather than like PTs and PT clients, and how to put things together in a nice way. And it was mainly I was learning about hypertrophy. I'm sure this stuff was out there, but I just hadn't been in that bubble yet of figuring it out. And I think now when I see new trainers join the team, or I'm just talking to PTs, to friends and whatever, I'm hearing often a lot of uncertainty with what to do when problems come up. I think having confidence as a trainer really does come from time in the field and a depth of learning. Like, you can't stop learning. So for example, now I feel exceptionally confident that I can get most people exceptional results. Not good, exceptional. and I say most people as I work with quite a broad population, and there are some I fail with massively. But those are kind of 1 in 1,000,000 kind of people, even more. But generally, everyone else gets extremely good results. Like, there's still going to be failures, there's still going to be problems to solve at every level. But it all comes down to these principles and developing your own training model. I think when you first start as a PT, everyone's going to start becoming a PT for a different reason. So for some people, it's just going to be a job. It's just going to be the next thing that they fall into. It's not going to be the most thought out thing. And I think that sets you up to kind of jump into whatever surroundings you jump into and follow what that group of people are doing. And I had this discussion yesterday with Rodog, at work. And our culture at work is like, you got to push to do as many sessions as possible. You got to be at the gym 6 a.m. till 8 p.m, 6 days a week. That's what the PTs do here. If you want to be successful, you have to do that. I didn't do that. And I think it's partly because I was fortunate enough to dive into personal training because I really wanted to help people. I wanted to do it for I'd basically gone through a shit time. 2019, breakup, super sad, super depressed, and I was like, what do I do with my life? I'm looking for some kind of purpose, meaning. I'd made a bit of money in Australia. I was like, I can't just pursue money for the sake of pursuing money. You achieve it and you're like, well, this is not actually making me feel good. This is not a good subjective experience of life. What else could I try to try and improve that? All right, okay, maybe I can try and have a positive influence on others. This is my thought process. To figure out my purpose, it was kind of like, to help people get stronger and fitter and healthier. That's what my purpose was back then. That's why I dove into PT, and that's what my purpose was. And having that as a back kind of point, I didn't care so much about the money I was making. I just cared about helping people get better, fitter, healthier. And that's pretty helpful. Back then, again, when I first started PTing, I was grafting those super, super long days. And I was learning in the mornings as well. I was still studying at university, still trying to learn constantly and trying to figure out like how I can help people more. Oh, my elbow hurts. Okay, I've got to go study like how to figure out how to get out of elbow pain, etc., etc. And it was a lot of random learning. And when problems came up, I would just try and figure that problem out. Whereas the last 2 and a bit years, it's been a lot more structured and deeper with regards to the way I'm learning. My purpose has changed with regards to how I describe it. And having that purpose is just like, now it's like to improve the quality of life subjectively and objectively of the people that I work with. It's effectively the same, but it just sounds cooler or sounds less cool, depending who you ask. And having that purpose, it means when I came into the gym that I'm working at, I wasn't like, I'm just here to work non-stop and not develop my understanding. Because I don't think you can really exponentially grow as a personal trainer just doing a bunch of sessions. I don't think you have the energy or the space to continue learning and developing. You actually need to create that space and time to learn. So I was like, mornings are for learning, I'm studying, and then I'll train my clients midday to the evening. That was my game plan. And that opened the space and opportunity to kind of understand what a training model is, what developing principles really mean, and that has been absolutely like phenomenal. And generally the training doesn't change so much. Like, the differences are subtle, but the outcomes are massive. The consequences are massive. From developing a principle-based approach and building out a thought process, a decision-making model for working with clients, it means you're not on the gym floor kind of worrying about what I'm going to do next, why we're doing what we're doing. You can just focus on providing the best possible service, having a good time, being relaxed, being comfortable, therefore helping your clients feel relaxed and comfortable. And you can just have good conversations, create a really good vibe, and get the best outcomes because you know how to do that. So I think if you're a PT and you're like a bit lost or bored or maybe overworked because you're just training so much, there's a couple things that I would recommend so highly, and they work so well for me. Number one is figuring out why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you a PT? And write that down. Next one is figure out where you want to be and why, like where you want to be in a couple years. And I always write out my best and my worst case scenario. And you can write about relationships, work, fitness, health, your friends, everything like that. Write out the best and the worst case scenario 2 years down the line. This helps you figure out where you want to go, gives you direction. A lot of people don't have direction. And I think when you gather that, when you actually write that down, honestly, I think as soon as you write that down and you figure out your purpose, you will get there. That sounds crazy, but no one actually does that first bit of write it down. If you write it down, you figure out where you want to go exactly, best and worst case scenario, 2 years from now, write as much as you can. I think you'll get there. I think that is putting it out there, figuring out where you want to be, and it gives you like a beacon to head towards. It gives you a light to work towards. It'll help you make better decisions. It will help you figure out what's the best step to make along the journey because you have somewhere to go. And again, that light should adjust over time. So yes, you have this end place you want to be in 2 years, whatever, but that might change along the journey. But writing it down is super, super helpful. Once you've done that, if you still want to be a PT, I hope you do, you still want to be a coach, strength and conditioning coach, physio, whatever, the next steps are, in my opinion, developing a training model. Writing out a training model that you can make your decisions based off. And you should do this away from sessions. Again, find space to write out what are your principles. Figure out what a principle is. And then write that out. Again, this will adjust across your career. So many PTs I see are thinking through what to do in a session when they're in a session. And that will take away from the quality of the service you provide. It will take away from the outcomes that you can get for your clients. And it's not what you want to be doing. The thinking should be done outside of a session. And of course, things will come up within a session like, oh, my knee hurts, or oh, my shoulder hurts. I went on a swim and my elbow's killing me, blah, blah, blah. When those things come up at the start of a session, you can go back to your model, just like thinking, and be like, all right, where does that fit in my model? Okay, I've got answers already prepared. Let's go and try and apply these answers and see if we can get some good outcomes. That's the benefit of having a model. And your model should be able to answer every single question. Just going to have a drink. So what is a model? What is a model? What is a training model in particular? A training model is a few principles, methods, strategies, all put together that construct every single decision you make with your clients. I've talked about some of my principles before. Some of them are, for example, overload. You have to overload to create an adaptation. Another one, you have to be able to move up and down the evolutionary ladder. That's from Pat Davidson, but it's such a beautiful principle. I just couldn't not take it. I love it. I will adjust and put my own spin on it at some point. But I'll be very honest. I think Pat Davidson is so smart, and he's done so much deep thinking. His training model of rethinking the big patterns, that his textbook, most of my decisions are based on that. And then I'll steal things from other people along the way, like Matt McInnes-Watson, David Gray. But that's really where I gathered most of my knowledge and my principles. So you've got to find these great people in the industry that you can learn from and read their models to get an idea of what that model looks like. So he broke it down in terms of like what a squat is, what a hinge is, what good hinges, what good squats are, and progressions, reasons for progressions, ways to progress, different principles of progressions, all of these things. There's so much depth. It's a 360-page textbook. Like, there's so many things in there that you can apply with your own training model. As well as it's your philosophy for life. It's your philosophy for making decisions. So another really good one is the Agile periodization framework for making decisions. And it really takes into consideration complex dynamic systems theory, which is what we are and something I'm absolutely obsessed with. And Robert Sapolsky's work. And it's all about, like, we can't predict with any sense of accuracy outcomes. We can see a general direction of what some type of work can lead towards. For example, if you do bench press, you will likely get a stronger chest, shoulders, and triceps. But we don't know how strong it will get and by which time period. We can just control the work that you're going to do. We don't know how far along you can get and at which rate you can do that. Which is why we have like a reactive approach to training rather than planning out years or months or weeks in advance. It's just, this is the minimum viable training stimulus that we want to give each week. 60-minute run at a level 7 out of 10 difficulty. 2 or 3 full body weight training sessions, which will ideally be hard and stimulating over time. Getting these kinds of minimum effective doses based off your decision-making process that leads to a higher likelihood of results, better management of retention. You don't set people up for false ideas like you're going to be this strong in this amount of period. We don't know, but we're going to head towards that. These are all examples of things that you can put together in your training model. So I'll do it like a little mind map, my training model, and write out principles, philosophies, decision-making protocols. What do I consider important? How to drive adaptations? What different adaptations can I go for? Strength, hypertrophy, speed, endurance, all of these different power, all of these different outcomes, and try and put a model together and how these things fit nicely. Once that's done, now this is a lot of work and it's continuous and you don't really stop. It's something that should evolve over time. It's not something that will just be like, all right, I've written out my training model, I'm a perfect PT. That training model will constantly be adapting because it will be wrong and you need to figure out how to make it better over time. And I would say I've done that over the last 2 years. So I've tried to figure out my training model more and more and more. And I feel exceptionally confident with the results I can get for people. And I've put that model into practice and the results are ridiculous. Like, a lot of my clients are becoming stronger than the PTs. A lot of my clients are just like the strongest in the room, super fit, PBing so much in the gym, or doing new, and getting amazing running results, doing different events and getting brilliant outcomes there, and it feels phenomenal. And it's because of that work that's been done with regards to learning how to get a higher likelihood of good outcomes that I put this high rate of success that I've had with my clients down to. I think a good coach can get good outcomes for a large group of people across a population. Everyone can get this person who can naturally lift a lot a bit stronger. That's not that challenging. But the person who's struggled all their life to get stronger or build muscle, getting them to build muscle and do it consistently over time, that is where you need these principles to rely on, to really know and trust your process, to help people get good adaptations. And people can tell if you know what you're doing. They'll trust you if you have confidence in your model and your decision making. So, how to build confidence as a personal trainer. It's going to be hard at the start. I think it does take a while. First few months as a PT will be mad. Figuring out your purpose, who you want to be, that's super useful. And then start thinking about developing a training model. I would love some questions from this. If you want to hear more, me dive into this further, just dive in the DMs. I've had some really good conversations over the last few weeks with PTs, and I want to keep that going. This actually works better when I've got someone else to talk to, bounce questions off. So I'm going to try and get some guests on the pod over the next few weeks. This year has been a lot about getting the pod going, and it's doing well, slowly building on the tube, on Spotify. Now we're going to get some guests on, try and organise that. I hope that will be enjoyable. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, got some value out of it, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Goodbye.